Hi again, and welcome to Lecture 3. I think today you'll notice a bit of a different background. This is where most of the lectures will be recorded. The last two were taken in a different city, and I was kind of out of my element, so some of the humor that you noticed may have been a bit out of bounds. But anyway, I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoyed the humor of the first two lectures, or not. Your choice. Huh? Huh? Okay, anyway. Today, we're going to be doing a crash course in grammar. Grammar and style. And this is the kind of lecture, I wish I had been given this lecture in my first year of university. Because I'm going to show you today how to use a comma correctly. How to comma correctly. I don't know why that came into my head. But anyway, you probably don't even know that song. It's from the 80s, Culture Club. Anyway, I'm going to show you comma rules, and there aren't many. There aren't many, as a matter of fact. I'm going to show you 5 comma rules. That was a pretty good joke I just got there off the top of my head. But anyway, so I'm going to show you 5 comma rules, but one of them is incredibly confusing. So by the end of that part of the lecture, I'm going to show you how you don't even have to worry about that if you follow everything I'm doing. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I'm going to show you 5 rules, okay? I did that. Anyway, I'm going to show you 5 rules. One of them will confuse the hell out of you if you're not very good with grammar. But then I'm going to show you how we can eliminate that problem and only worry about 4 rules, okay? So, follow with me and you'll see what I mean. Like I said, I was not strong with this stuff when I first came to university. I wasn't. So keep that in mind. All right? Now, have your notes in front of you because, as I said, we're going to be doing quite a few things here today. It doesn't look like a very long lecture, but there's quite a bit that I will elaborate. All right? And so have your notes with you. Make some notes on your own, and then we'll go from there. So the very first thing we're going to look at today, one word. I'm not joking. We're going to look at one word, and that word is clause. What is a clause? There's the very first question I have in front of you. C-L-A-U-S-E. Okay? A clause. A clause simply means a group of words. It does not mean necessarily a full sentence. It simply means some words. That's all a clause means. Then we can move on from that. We can expand. So, we have a clause, a group of words. That's it. Then, okay, there are different types of clauses. And I'm going to show you the 2 very basic ones for now. Keep in mind, as I said, we're going to get much more sophisticated as we go through this course. I'm starting with just with the basics, right, to get us ready for everything else that we'll need later on. So, we have a clause. A clause is a group of words. An example. Here's an example of a clause. And again, don't put your hand up, okay? Like I know what I'm doing here, okay? You'll see what I mean. Let's just say we had the phrase or clause, a great player. Okay. Well, that's a clause. Is it a proper sentence? No. No, it's not. But it is a clause. It's a group of words. So, in the notes, okay, and again, like pause if you need to and make some notes here. This type of clause, group of words, a great player, is not a complete sentence. Therefore, we call it a dependent clause. Okay? We call it a dependent clause, meaning if it's dependent, well, think about it. If you are dependent on your parents or guardians or caregivers, then you rely on something else or someone else. Well, that's exactly how this works. And so it's not a full sentence, and so therefore it is dependent. It needs other things. Okay, I'll give you an example in a second. And so a dependent clause, right, such as a great player, right, is simply a group of words that do not stand on their own. That's it. So I don't even know if I have that in the sentence, in the notes, so write that down. A dependent clause is a group of words that do not or does not group does not stand on its own. Okay? Then, of course, we'll get into other types of clauses. So, let's just think about that for a second. Wayne Gretzky, okay, was a fantastic player. Not a great skater. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just giving you an example. Wayne Gretzky was a fantastic player. Not a great skater. Okay, so in that case, Wayne Gretzky was an incredible player is a complete sentence. So we would call that an independent clause, as you see there in the notes, right? That would be an independent clause. All that means is it's a proper sentence. Think about it that way. It's a proper sentence. That's all. It's an independent clause, meaning it's a group of words that stands on its own. Okay? Not a great skater. I'm not saying that's true, by the way, because he was one of, if you actually know hockey, he had the best set of edges you've ever seen in hockey. Okay, that was one of the subtle things about him. But what I'm trying to show you here is just think about the words. So, not a great skater does not stand on its own. Therefore, okay, it needs something else. How would we fix a sentence like that? Well, here comes the dreaded semicolon, which I'm going to end off with today. All right? So if we were to write the sentence that way, we would need to write, Wayne Gretzky was a fantastic player. Okay? Semicolon, not a great skater. That's how you would actually do that. I'm going to do a bit more with that later on in the lecture today. All I'm trying to do for now is make you understand the phrase or the word clause. Two sets of clauses, two different types of clauses, independent and dependent. Independent simply means a proper sentence. Dependent means it's some words, but they don't stand, they're not a proper sentence, and so therefore they need something else. Now, later on, I'm going to show you why the dependent clause is what can cause comma splices. So if you've ever been told that you use, like you have comma splices or, excuse me, or fragments in your sentences, that's exactly how this stuff works. Okay? So, and again, we'll get to that. I don't think we'll get to that today. We might talk a bit about it. But anyway, so make a note of that as well. If you've ever been told that you tend to have comma splices, well, it's because you don't understand how fragments work and the relationship between different clauses. Okay? But I just made that way too complicated. All you got to know for now, like for our purposes here, and for a grammar quiz, for instance, would be there are independent clauses, which simply means a group of words that stands on its own, and then dependent clauses, meaning they're not quite full sentences, they need something else. Okay? They need some help. All right. Now we're getting into comma rules. And it's really interesting how this next part will work. I remember, I believe it was grade 12, where we were given like a week's worth of grammar, and that's about it. I look back on English in high school, and I wonder how did we spend all that time? Because we weren't really taught rules of grammar or punctuation, like style, and instead we were just thrown, books at us and asked to write essays. And I think that's a really big one now in high school, I believe, is this independent studies, right? Not a good idea. I really think it's better, like we're all better off if we learn the fundamentals of writing first before we get into all that kind of stuff, right? All I mean by that is, like, we probably should be doing grammar and stuff like that maybe in grade 9, like as a refresher course from what we learned in elementary school, right? But for some reason that just all goes out the window. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Don't email me. I am an English teacher and I disagree. Anyway, okay, and so now we're going to look at the 5 rules of commas. And Some of them are incredibly simple. Then, like I said, one of them gets very confusing. And it's that one confusing sentence construction that can get us into a whole lot of trouble. And it's exactly the one I find all the time in writing. Like when I'm correcting papers, you'll see what I mean. So let's just start with the most fundamental. Have your notes in front of you, as always, okay? Have your notes in front of you. And let's look at the very first one, okay? So I'm in number 2 now. I don't usually have notes like this if I was in class, but I think it's easier if I refer to things like that, right? I think I might have mentioned that in the very first class, okay? But anyway, so 2A, this is it. It's as simple as this. Do not make this mistake in your writing, okay? All right. When you have the word but in the middle of a sentence, notice the construction there, okay? The but is with a lowercase b, small b, but that means, like, we call that lowercase, all right? If you have the word but in the middle of a sentence and you are writing correctly, you must always have that preceded, okay, before with a comma. So whatever words were coming before that word, then you would have a comma, space, and then but, okay? Now, it is true, for those of you who really know your grammar, that that's called a conjunction. I don't care whether you know what that word means or not. I don't. What I'm concerned about is that you understand that the word but in the middle of a sentence, if we're doing this correctly, must be preceded by a comma. Why? Okay? So now here's the logic behind what I'm trying to show you. So I'm talking, and I'm talking, and I'm talking, okay? Now notice what I'm doing with my fingers. Like, I'm talking, and I'm talking. So notice I'm using the word and. In other words, everything is going along in the same way. But, so the minute that we include the word but in a sentence, okay, 99.99999% of the time, it indicates a shift in thought. Make a note of that. That's not in your notes, okay? It indicates a shift in thought. But the question becomes, all right, it indicates for whom? For the writer or the reader? This is exactly what you want to start thinking about in your writing, okay? There are certain words, certain pieces of punctuation, right, that are there not for you as a writer, although obviously it helps you with your style, but it's actually there for the reader. It's there to guide the reader. So if I'm using the word and, okay, quite a bit in my sentence structure, there's probably no need for any punctuation because all I'm doing is continuing my thoughts. But, comma before, but if I start doing other things with my thought, I want to indicate to the reader, right, by guiding them through my thought process. That's how punctuation works, right? Literally, that's how punctuation works. It works by guiding the reader through your thought process as you're writing. So there's your first one right there. Comma before the word but, because the word but indicates a shift in thought. Right? The minute you do that, well then, indicate that to the reader so the reader can kind of follow along with your thinking. That's it. Okay? Yes, there is one exception, I know. And the exception is actually the word except. So let me give you a quick example, and I can almost guarantee you'll never use this. Everybody but John went to the store. Okay, so yes, in that case, you do not need a comma before the word but. However, because that's another one I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes, I would argue that most of us, almost every one of us, would never write it that way. We would write everyone except John went to the store. So, but again, yeah, it is true that there is that one exception. Okay? So, I hope I didn't confuse you with that one. I'm still in 2A, right? So everybody but John went to the store. That's fine. No punctuation. What I'm showing you here is most of us would actually write, everyone except John went to the store. Okay? And that's the only exception when it comes to that word. One last thing on that. For style purposes, and there are arguments about this. People go back and forth on this one. But I would suggest don't ever start a sentence with the word but. It ruins the flow of your writing. So it's just a suggestion, okay? Anyway, I'll leave it at that. You'll notice sometimes I want to say more, then I realize, okay, if I start getting into that, then all of a sudden I'm opening up a can of worms for one or two of you, and the rest don't even know what the hell we're talking about. So I'm not going to worry about that, okay? Okay. Now, number two, I'm sure you're all familiar with this one. But there is a similar, like a subtlety, I should say, to rule number two. So, when you're writing out what I would call a series, some of you would think of that as a list, and yes, you could use that word too. The word list, though, is usually associated with technical writing. Okay, but I mean, it's the same thing. And so, let's just say I'm writing out a list, usually with adjectives, right? Descriptive words, okay? And let's just say I wrote a sentence like, I like apples, oranges, peaches, and pears, okay? Or sorry, I like apples, oranges, peaches, and cream. Right. Now, I've chosen those words very carefully. This isn't just some example off the top of my head. There's a reason why I've chosen those exact words. And I'm sure some of you have picked up on that. Okay, so I like apples, comma, oranges, comma, peaches, and cream. There's about 2 or 3 things that I could talk about here, and I will, all right? So let's just elaborate on a couple, all right? Now, if I wanted to, I could easily write this sentence in another way. Well, I'm going to show you about 3 or 4 different ways. What I meant by that was, I could have written this sentence, I like apples, comma, oranges, comma, peaches, comma, and cream. Yes, that is acceptable, and it is, and when we use that extra comma before the word and, that is what's called an Oxford comma. It's just a piece of style, like okay, but that's actually known as the Oxford comma. Why in the world am I telling you that? Okay, here's the reason why I'm telling you. This may not ever happen in your university career, but it may happen once you graduate and you actually are working somewhere and you actually have to do a bit of writing, especially when it comes to, say, I don't know, maybe you're working right now in a retail store or a grocery store and you happen to deal with inventory. And maybe you order stuff. Well, let me just ask you a question. Let's just say I wanted to order 1,000 cases of each of those items that we have in front of us in that sentence. Okay? How many cases would end up in my store? Because there are 2 obvious answers here, if you're following along. Well, at first you would think, well, I'm gonna end up with 4,000 cases, right? If I'm ordering 1,000 cases of each of these things. But sometimes peaches and cream can actually be seen as one unit when it comes to corn, right? Corn, C-O-R-N. So in that case, I could end up with 3,000 cases on my floor, and maybe I ordered the wrong, maybe the wrong things came in, which I intended. Okay, well, how would we fix something like that? As a writer, you sometimes want to be careful of how you list things. Remember, in a series, well, I could have easily written, let's just do the order now. I want to order 1,000 cases of apples, comma, oranges, comma, peaches, comma, and cream. Okay, then it's a bit clearer. But if I wanted to be really clear, why wouldn't I just do this instead? Let's move if I know damn well that I want 4 separate items, why wouldn't I then move peaches, okay, to the beginning of my series and say I would like to order 1,000 cases of peaches, comma, apples, comma, oranges, comma, and cream. I know it's a silly little example, but what I'm trying to show you here is there are times where, depending upon where you place commas, it can change the meaning of your sentence. We will see this later on when we start talking about modifying. Big time in English, okay? Modification, like modifiers, dangling modifiers, misplaced modifiers, in the English language, that can really, really screw up some of your meaning. So one small example there, but be aware. So let me repeat, yes, you may put a comma before the word and. In an example like that, it's simply known as the Oxford comma. Okay, it's a rule that originated in England, right? Oxford University. Okay, that's where that comes from. All right, and so yeah, so those two I think are pretty straightforward. Now the next one is pretty straightforward as well. Okay, when you begin sentences with words like because and although. When you were younger, you were probably taught, don't begin sentences with those two words. Well, in fact, whoever told you that, they were wrong. However, which a word I'll get to in a moment, but there was a reason why they were telling you not to begin sentences with words like that. Because when you begin a sentence with because, although, there's a few others as well, then all of a sudden you're going to have to be aware of grammar. You're going to have to be aware of commas. So two points here, probably more than two. But let's just do the example, then I'll elaborate. So if we're doing a sentence, okay, notice in the example that we have here at the bottom of the first page, although x, comma, y. Now, let's go back to the top of the page. What word did we begin with? Clause. So now x equals a clause and y equals a clause. Almost always, I want to say always, but almost always, x and y will be dependent clauses. Now don't get confused, don't worry, we'll work it through. All I'm saying is x equals, in the example that I have here, x is simply some words. That's all, some words. You don't have to say a group of words, it's some words. Y is some words. Then, if we do this properly, we would have a sentence constructed, let's just do one off the top of our head. Oh, we already looked at that paragraph before. So, although imperialism benefited some, okay, comma, it actually hurt many others. Not very good off the top of my head. What I'm saying, though, is think about that for just a second. Although imperialism benefited some, okay, comma, it actually destroyed many others. So in that case, we have information before the comma and information after. And the same would apply to the word because. And so in a sentence like that, we have constructed what we would call a passive sentence. Yes, I know, yes. But a passive sentence can work very well when we're dealing with transitions. When we're moving from, remember in lecture 2, from one... So, and I know, by the way, I got a bit out of hand with some of the humor in lecture 2, but anyway. But if we're dealing with like one area of argumentation, right? Remember I was telling you about that? Remember the terms I kept using? Section, areas of argument, what have you. Well then, we have one area of argument, and then we want to move into the next. So although it was positive for some, that's what I was basically writing about in the first part of my essay. Now I'm going to start talking about the negatives. And so that would work perfectly at the end of a paragraph and an end of a section, okay, where I'm moving from one attitude into another. Okay? So in that example, a transitional sentence might work very well. Okay? All right. And the exact same construction works for the word because. Now, please make a note of this. Never construct a sentence with the word although, comma. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna have a sip of tea here, Never construct a sentence with the word although, comma. Don't ever do that. Horrible, horrible structure. Okay? Instead, it has to be although X. In other words, although and then some words, then the comma, and then Y, more words. Okay? Again, I'm trying to pick off all the major style wreckers that I can think of in a first year course. And I'll bet I did it. I'm almost positive I probably did it as well. Okay? So there's the first two. The first three, I should say. And pretty straightforward, right? Pretty straightforward. Number 4, pretty straightforward as well. So I'm calling them introductory words or phrases. And there are hundreds in the English language, might even be more than hundreds. And they're words like on the one hand, on the other hand. The common ones would be therefore, furthermore, right? And then firstly, which wasn't even a word when I first started teaching. I'm not joking. The word firstly did not exist when I first started teaching because I'm 150 years old, and so that's how long I've been doing this. But then we also have, and I'm not joking, this word it is a major style wrecker in English, the word however. So they all fall into the same category. Most of them we can deal with, no problem. But for some reason, however, gives us problems, as I'll show you in just a second. So, write down exactly, or at least highlight where I have the comma in 2D. Okay, 2D as in Dolores or David. Okay, the introductory word or phrase, I've capitalized the I, meaning these words or phrases, they're at the start of the sentence. Okay? Like literally, if you're not very good with this stuff, I would actually literally write start of the sentence for number 2D. Okay? Start of the sentence. On the one hand, on the other hand, therefore, furthermore. Okay? However. So all of these words, the way I'm showing you in number 4, are at the beginning of the sentence. All right. Well, why am I repeating that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. Let's go to number 5. And this is where we get really confused. So, in number 5, we're talking about the exact same words that we're using in number 4. When I say 5, I mean like in 2E, Edward, okay, Edwina. We're looking at the exact same words that we were looking at in 2D. But all of a sudden, now they're not at the beginning of the sentence, they're somewhere in the middle. Okay? Before I show you everything I want to do, there's nothing wrong with having those words in the middle of a sentence. And in fact, that can actually sophisticate your writing. But if you don't know what you're doing, then they can really ruin your writing. So again, I'm trying to show you how to minimize problems. So let's look now. This is going to get confusing. Then I'll fix it. Okay. Notice I have an X at the beginning. An X there signifies what? What do you think it signifies? A clause. A group of words. Is it a sentence? No, not necessarily. It's just simply a group, It's some words. That's it. Okay? Then I have a comma. Then I have the exact same introductory words or phrases that I had in 2D. Then I have another comma. Then I have Y. And again, Y is simply some words or a clause. Now we get sophisticated. If I do this correctly and I'm writing proper sentences, I should literally be able to take out, okay, mentally, the introductory words or phrase, okay, from the sentence. I should be able to take X and Y. I should be able to put them together, and that should create a nice, smooth, independent clause. Okay? We're almost half an hour in. If you just got confused there, go back to the very beginning and take a look at what I just said, or what I began with when it came to clauses, right? Dependent, independent, and so on. And so, basically, x plus y, like in other words, we're taking out that introductory word or phrase, x plus y, put them together. That should be a nice independent clause or a nice, smooth, complete sentence. Okay? All right. So so let me show you an incorrect example, then a correct example. So, John loves chocolate ice cream, comma. However, comma, Jill does not like ice cream on hot days. So, at first you would think, well, okay, that should be fine. I'm doing exactly what you told me to do in 2E. Correct? Well, no. Because I said we should be able to take the introductory word or phrase out, okay, and the commas out, put everything together, and should have one nice, smooth thought. So, let's do it. John loves chocolate ice cream. John loves chocolate ice cream. Jill does not. Okay, can we see the problem there? In other words, what you actually have here are two independent clauses, two sentences that stand on their own. You cannot join them that way with those commas, okay, in the construction that we have. Now, can we, by the way, I'm going to come back to that in a second. Can we, on the other hand, can we have the word however in the middle of a sentence? Of course we can, if we know what we're doing. So let's take a look at the correct one. Then I'll come back to the first one. Sally, however, thought there were major problems with the proposal. So, now, let's take the however and the commas out. Let's just take them out mentally for a moment. Sally thought there were major problems with the proposal. Okay, well, that sounds fine. It is fine. So in that case, you've used it correctly. Now let's go back to the incorrect one and fix it. John loves chocolate ice cream. However, Jill does not like ice cream on hot days. A very awkward sentence. Incorrect. Like not just awkward. It's wrong. I don't usually like to say a word like that, but it's just wrong. You can't write that way. Okay, but what were the rules that I just showed you? Right now, in the incorrect example, we're looking at Rule 5. Why don't we just go back and think to ourselves for a second? Because I know I just confused probably half of you. Half of you are thinking, what? I don't know what the hell you're talking about there. No problem. No problem. What did I say in Rule 4? How do we fix what I just confused you with? That was terrible grammar, I know. With which I just confused you. And how do we fix that? I'm confused. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Oh, no problem. No problem. Let's go back to Rule 4. Now let's look at the incorrect example that I have in front of you. How do you fix it? No problem whatsoever. John loves chocolate ice cream. Period. Capital H. However, Jill does not like ice cream on hot days. Done. What did I just do? I brought the word however into the beginning of a new sentence. And so if I go back to rule number 4, sorry, I keep saying 4, I mean 2D, make sure you always have those introductory words or phrases at the beginning of your sentences. If you just got confused. If you know what you're doing, don't worry about it. But if you just got confused and you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, how about we just forget Rule 5? Don't ever have introductory words and phrases in the middle of your sentences. Just don't do it. Instead, be safe. Have them at the beginning of your sentences. Simple as that. And I really don't know how to simplify it anymore. I really don't understand what the hell you're talking about. Okay, fine. Never have words like furthermore, therefore, however, on the one hand, on the other hand, anywhere other than the beginning of your sentence. And if you have them at the beginning of your sentence, after you have that word or phrase, put a comma. Then write a proper sentence. Done. Literally, done. That's all you have to do. So, in a strange way, now we only have 4 rules to worry about. Now, are there much more sophisticated examples that I could show you? Of course there are. But that's not what I'm worried about for now. I'm worried about making sure you understand the very fundamental ways of using the comma. All right? So, basically, I'm done with that. So, how many rules do we have for the comma? How many? 4. If you are confused, then there's only 4. And you just make sure you never fall into the trap of doing number 5. I'm sorry, I keep saying 4 and 5, but just don't have those introductory words or phrases in the middle of your sentences if you're still kind of learning this stuff and figuring it out. All right? And as I said, but if you already know this stuff, then don't even listen to what I'm saying. I'm being serious, right? Okay. Good. Okay. So I think 2 things there, okay? Now we understand the word clause. There are different types. Later on, I'm getting into much more sophisticated stuff when it comes to clauses, right? I know subordinate and all of that, but we're not worried about that for now. Not for a quiz or anything like that. All we're worried about for now is the basic stuff to make sure we understand, okay? Which is exactly where we're moving next. Because the comma actually is like a major piece of punctuation in English. And then so is this next part, the possessive case. And so, okay. By the way, I hope the brightness is okay today. It's a very dreary day here in Ottawa as I'm lecturing. There's a song that was in my head this morning. It's a rainy afternoon. Candy. I wonder if anyone knows that song, right? But anyway. Always feel free to email me with answers when I throw little things at you. So again, it's a rainy afternoon. Candy. All right. Although I guess nowadays you can just Google that. And so don't bother emailing me. Now I get 45 emails. I know it. All right. It's Iggy Pop. All right. Candy. All right. Anyway. So now let's look at, again, I know some of you are shaking your heads thinking, this is so basic. Yeah, I'll bet I could confuse you on a few things if I wanted to, all right? And so now we're going to look at the difference between a contraction and the possessive case, okay? You've got it in your notes. Circle, but put a question mark and look it up. You shouldn't have to email me on, well, what do you mean by that? Just look it up. Anyway, all right. So notice what I've written there. Don't write the way you speak. All right. So why did I underline don't? I could have bolded it. I could have italicized it. Anyway, I'm just bringing attention to it. Don't. Don't write don't in your essays, okay? Write do not. Try to have formal language. And the reason why I'm suggesting that, I wasn't toilet trained at gunpoint, all right? I'm not being anal retentive or anything like that. I'm trying to show you how to avoid mistakes. That's what all of this stuff is about for this lecture in particular. Just avoid mistakes, all right? So, the problem with a contraction, so the word don't, that's what we call in English a contraction, all right? Where we've squeezed 2 words together, we've dropped a letter or 2, and we put an apostrophe. Don't do that. And notice what I just said there. I said, don't do that. Don't write the way you speak. In other words, if you actually spoke properly, you would sound like a dork, as so would I. Right? Do not do that. Okay? So, but what I'm saying is in your writing, avoid that. Avoid that. Why? Because when we get to words like, some people don't even realize this. The word its, I-T-S. Many people don't even realize that's a word. I am not joking. I have done this for 85 years of correcting papers, all right? I actually had one student one time write me and say, "Are you really 80 years old?" Give me a break. I'm only 78. Anyway, all right. So, but the word its, I-T-S, many people don't even understand that that's a word. And so that's a word I see all the time. And, by the way, spell check doesn't catch any of this stuff. It simply doesn't, right? It is not going to pick up on mistakes like that because IT apostrophe S is something that spell check would accept. It would. But when we use the word its as in its, it means possessive case of something inanimate, something belonging to. So, let me give you a quick example. And again, I'm expecting that your English is up to a certain level, right? So we're brushing up here, right? Just fixing a few problems. So I was reading a proposal and I found its conclusion to be problematic. So, in other words, when I'm using the word its in that case, I'm talking about the conclusion of the proposal, the conclusion belonging to the proposal. Okay? See what I mean? So, its means belonging to something inanimate. All right? Possession. Your, that's a huge one because of texting. Your is that's something I notice quite often. People trying to say your as in you are, right? You're going to be late for whatever, and they write YOUR. Well, that's incorrect. So the rule here is always write the phrase out in full. Okay? And when you read it back to yourself, again, spell check, grammar, all that stuff, Grammarly, I mean, that is a waste of money, all right? It does not catch many of the things that I will. It simply won't, all right? So let's think of a word like your. That's a good example. That is your book, okay, on the table, okay? Now, what did I just say? If you're unsure, write it out. Just write the full thing out. That is your book on the table. Well, now, immediately you know that's wrong. You can just tell, right? So sometimes you're better off to write it out, and then all of a sudden you'll realize, and by the way, the next word we have is whose. And that's a perfect example. I see that one is quite often. The final one on page 3 or page 2 is the most common. So let me go back. So when you're in doubt, spread it out. Just don't use, hey, that wasn't bad, eh? When you're in doubt, spread it out. But anyway, my point being, don't use contractions. Then once you avoid the contraction, you can then figure out exactly what you're trying to say. Like I said, in texting, I see that quite often. But the big one is at the very bottom of page 2. There. All right. You now have 3 possibilities. There, spelled the way that I have it. Then the contraction. And then THERE. Okay. If you follow what I'm doing, by the way, I will bust you big time. Let's just say you're like right at that edge of trying to get an A in this course, but you keep making mistakes like this, no way am I going to give you that grade. No way. Because these are very basic, simple things that we can fix quite easily. All right? So, you have 3 possibilities. Well, no you don't. Let's get rid of THEY apostrophe RE, because that actually means they are. Okay? It means something totally different from the other 2 words. Now, THEIR means belonging to them. That's what that word means, belonging to them. That is their house. Okay, that is their house. That is the house that belongs to them. That has a very, very specific use in writing. The final there, THERE, that's the one you're going to use almost all the time. All right? So let's do a quick, why don't you just write this sentence out right now? That is their, THEIR, their house over there, THERE. We could do 1,000 different examples with sentences, right? But that's not really what I'm trying to show you. Instead of doing 1,000 different sentences and getting some right and some wrong, let's just fix it right now. Get rid of the contraction and instead Always use, if you mean the possessive case, use the proper term. Okay, so for there, T-H-E-I-R. Every other time, it's T-H-E-R-E. And so that's why, page 3, I can almost skip most of this here, because that's why we get confused. I don't even need to look at the notes now, but you can make some quick points if you want. So we get confused because we have too many choices. Too many choices because of the contraction. Get rid of the contraction, all of a sudden, we've just eliminated, okay? I was about to say half the choices, but almost, pretty darn close. Pretty darn close, all right? When it comes to possession and words like that, all right? Okay, so take a look then, where I say the whole idea of the possessive case, it simply shows something that belongs to something else. And by the way, English is one of the few, if maybe the only language that actually shows possession that way. Those of you who are French speakers, you know that it has to do more to do with modification, right? Very different. Okay, and I will get into a bit of that in a later lecture. Okay. Now, when do we use then that apostrophe? Well, right there. Okay, we're in number 5 now. Jones. So this is the big question. Many people get confused about this when it comes to words ending in S. They get confused about where to put the apostrophe. And so, we have the word, I gave you a specific word, I chose that word specifically, Jones. So, don't do anything now. Sit back and just listen to what I'm saying, okay? If you tend to get confused on this. I want to show the possession of Jones. Well, I know that the last name is Jones, ending in S. But now I'm confused about where the apostrophe goes. For some reason, people get confused about this, so let's see if I can clean that up. So I'm confused about that. Okay, well, what's his name? His name is Jones, last name, okay, or first name. I don't want to divide the room. It could be either, right? So anyway, that reminds me of a Norm Macdonald joke, but all right. So, okay, so his last name is Jones. Don't do this. Listen to what I'm saying. Let's just say I wanted to show possession of Jones, and I put the apostrophe after the E. Let's just say I did that. Well, now what have I done? I've actually changed his name. Because if I put the apostrophe there, now all of a sudden his name is Joan. Because of how I put that apostrophe, okay? I got all excited there and didn't finish that sentence correctly. So if I do that, all of a sudden his name now is Joan apostrophe S. That's wrong. It's incorrect. All right? I'm almost afraid to say the word wrong nowadays. But that is wrong, okay? Okay. Now I'm confused. I don't know. A word ending in S, I don't know where to put the apostrophe. Okay. Let's just jump down a tiny bit here. The major problem with an apostrophe, okay, can occur when you wish to show possession of words ending in S. Okay? I hope you all understand what I'm talking about here. Like if I said, I don't even have the example here in front of me, but if I said something like Tom's car, T-O-M, so his name is Tom, apostrophe S, Tom's car. That's what I'm talking about right now, right? Well, if I was doing that, but I had a word ending in S, that's where people get confused. So here's your rule. Draw a box around the word. Around the entire word that you wish to show. Oh, that was almost from Pulp Fiction, right? Don't be a meaning square. So draw a box around the word. The apostrophe goes outside the box. Simple as that. Draw a mental box, whatever the word is, draw a mental box, then the apostrophe goes outside the box. That's where the apostrophe goes. Don't change the word. Okay? Just don't change the word. And so this can apply to if we're dealing with, say, singular versus plural. And I think that's the example that I have next, right? Yeah. So let's just say I had the word kittens. And let's just say I threw out at you right now, put the apostrophe where you think it should go with that word. Well, that could get quite confusing because on the one hand, If I'm talking about many kittens, then the apostrophe, I told you, draw a box, the apostrophe goes outside the box. But what if I was saying I only had one kitten, and it was the kitten's play area? Well, okay then, draw a box around the word. How many kittens do I have? One. So the word now is kitten. So kitten, I would draw the mental box, right? Apostrophe, that's where the S goes. Okay, sorry, the S goes after the apostrophe. So it's little things. That's all in your notes there. It's all in your notes, okay? Like I don't need to do this word for word. And then the question, the question becomes, I'm on page 4 now. What is the actual word you wish to show possession of? And I know I could have written that with better grammar. Like I said, sometimes you sound like a dork when you're actually speaking in with precise English. But anyway, so the idea here, everything keeps going back to this. I'm on page 4 now. We're going back to the reader. We're indicating things to the reader. All right? So just be aware of those things. So I don't know if I need to clarify that or not. Yeah, there it is right there. Yeah. It just so happens that in English usage, if you have a plural possessive, like let's say I have many dogs, then that is the dog's house. See the example there? Highlight that. If you're confused, highlight that. In other words, I'm showing possession of more than one dog. But if I only had one dog, it would be D-O-G apostrophe S. That's how possession works. Now, okay, I don't know why, but many former students, I'm going to say something that I'm going to tell you not to do it. Let's just say you had Jones, apostrophe. Can you add the extra S after Jones? Believe it or not, yes, you can. It is like if we're going to go with strict guidelines, yes, you are allowed to do that, but don't. Okay, don't, because in usage we never do that. We never do that. When it comes to a word ending in S apostrophe, we don't add the other S. But if you actually are stickler and look at like grammar books, you are allowed to do it. It is optional, but don't do it, because when not too many people realize that it is optional. So anyone who's ever correcting any work of yours, if they see you do that, they'll tell you that it's wrong. And so there's no point in arguing with them. Well, in fact, like I'm right. No, just don't do it. Don't add the extra S, okay? But again, if the word is Jones, you still have to have that first S, then it's the apostrophe. Draw a mental box, don't change the word. So the question becomes then, how many dogs do you have? And then you have to decide where the apostrophe goes. It could be either one dog, D-O-G apostrophe S. More than one dog, D-O-G-S apostrophe. Right? Singular, plural. All right. And then this one, I thought I would just add only because I've seen this sometimes where people get confused. If you have more than one possessive subject. And so let's just say you have a car, only one car. I had to put my one finger up there. But let's just say you have only one car shared by Tom and Mary. Then Tom and Mary's car is in the shop for repair. So notice the way I wrote that there. I don't need to elaborate. That's the correct way of doing it. You only put the apostrophe after Mary, right? Because it's both. They both own the car. Okay. However, okay, capital H apostrophe. Let's just say there were two cars in question. Then you would write Tom's and Mary's cars, plural, are in the shop for repair. Okay. I just thought I'd throw that one in there. I don't think I'll have that on a quiz, and I don't even think it'll ever come up in your writing. But if you ever notice it in like if you're reading something, that's the way you would do it. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting into the next 20 minutes. It will be a good, I think, 20 minutes. We're getting into some style now, and I'm telling you, this next thing at the bottom of page 4. I'll know if you are an effective writer or not with the very first thing you hand in. I'll be able to tell immediately if you have a problem with number 6. ing words. Words ending in ing, okay, ing, I'm not joking, words ending in ing, that are not the subjects of sentences. So I told you, you have to make some notes. Well, there's a note. You might want to pause right there. Ing words, okay? Words ending in ing at the beginning of a sentence that are not the subject of the sentence. They are style wreckers, and they will destroy your writing if you don't know how to use them correctly. These are things known as gerunds. So again, don't bring this up in our workshops. Don't ask me what a gerund is. I'm telling you right now, and it is a word that I will be writing on some of your papers. You are having problems with gerunds. What do I mean by that? Okay. Having trouble sleep. I want you to write this sentence down. Having trouble sleeping. The TV helps me through the night. Okay? Having trouble sleeping. The TV helps me through the night. If I were to write the sentence that way, then the thing that's having trouble sleeping is the TV. It's not me. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to elaborate. I'm going to later on. For now, I want to say one simple thing. Do not begin sentences with words like giving or having unless you really know what you're doing, because they will cause huge problems later on when it comes to subject-verb agreement. So again, no email, simple. Don't start words with giving. Don't start sentences with words like giving or having. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, go ahead and do it if you want. But if you want to get better at your writing, don't start sentences with those two words. There's a couple of others as well, but those are the major ones. Okay? Those are the major ones. All right? Okay? Again, try to trust me when it comes to some of the things that I'm saying, which I don't really get into too much, only because I've seen it before so many times. Those two words they can ruin sentences. Having and giving. All right. Also, the very bottom of page 4, watch out for words like that, this, it. Like if you keep using words like that is, this is, it is, if you do that in a bit of a longer paragraph and you have more than one subject in the paragraph, it can start to get a bit vague as to what thing you're referring to. Okay? So just be aware of that. Okay? Then we have infinitives. Some of you may be aware of that as well. A split infinitive. There are two schools of thought when it comes to this. And this is going to sound really egg-headish on my part. There is no such word. There are descriptivists and there are prescriptivists. The descriptivists, I'm kind of in that first school where I understand that things change and evolve. The prescriptivists, they're more hardline. So there are some people who will say you should never split up the infinitive form of the verb. So to write, to do. So I wanted to effectively write. That would be an example of a split infinitive where I broke up the to and write. And there's many others as well. I'll give you a quick one in a moment. So instead, some would argue, no, you should write, he wanted to write effectively rather than he wanted to effectively write. Okay? And then, okay, I've got the example right there. So it's when you insert an adverb between to and the verb. He always tries to do the work. He always tries to carefully do the work. Well, the hardliners would say, no, you should write that. He always tries to do the work carefully. And so I'm not going to bust you on stuff like that. But I'll give you a quick example. We're almost done, by the way. I'll give you a quick example. If you're a Star Trek fan, to boldly go where no man has gone before, right? Well, hardliners would say, no, you're not supposed to say that. You should say, to go boldly where more... I'm not a Star Trek fan, so don't call me for like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. Anyway, but that's an example of that. But my point being, I'm not too worried about it. I'm more worried about the fact that you can write a sentence. Okay, like at least get everything together. Then we have acronyms. So be aware of those as well. When we're using, say, an abbreviation of some letters to stand for a set of words, right? And so a quick example, National Hockey League. And so then if I actually I wanted to write NHL throughout my entire paper, which I can do. Well, the first time I did that, I would actually write National Hockey League. And then after that, I would have a parenthetical note, then NHL, and then close parenthetical note. Well, now I can actually use NHL for the rest of my paper, and I don't need the parentheses. Okay, so that's how you do that. All right. Now, I'm gonna finish off with these are style things. Okay, got about 5 minutes left. Please get rid of semicolons unless you really know how to use them. All right, get rid of them because too many times I see. Well, let me just be honest with you. I think many of you have been taught that if you're uncertain about punctuation, just throw a semicolon in there. That's not the best. That's really not the best rule of thought. So let me give you a quick example. Terry plays hockey, semicolon. Terry plays football, semicolon. Terry plays tennis, semicolon, whatever. Well, okay, technically is that correct? Yeah, I guess it is, but it's really horrible style. Why wouldn't you then just instead say, Terry plays football, comma, hockey, comma, and tennis? Or whatever. I don't even know what words I use there. In other words, I'm trying to show you how to get a nice flow to your writing. Okay? So try to avoid semicolons unless you really know how to use them. I would argue, I don't think I've ever used a semicolon. I swear, I can't think of the last time I used a semicolon. There's just much better ways to get around that. All right? Then, dashes. Like, don't have... now I'm going to get a bit funny with the rest of the lecture, okay? Or at least you'll be the judge of that. Your choice. But dashes. So I have a thought, and all of a sudden in the middle of the sentence, I put a dash, and I just add a couple of words that kind of came into my head. Then I put another dash, and then I finish the thought. Don't do that, all right? That's just horrible style. Horrible style. And these are the things I've seen over the years. Same thing with parentheses in the middle of sentences, all right? Obviously, we'll need parentheses when it comes to, well, acronyms, and then when it comes to citations, which we'll be doing... Or no, we did that in the last lecture. So obviously you need those things, but not in the middle of a sentence, okay? Yeah. So that's why I say, obviously there's times where, I'm just repeating exactly the language here. I've done the lecture before, so that it's all off the top of my head. Anyway, yeah. Oh, okay. And then, yes, quotation marks. We're almost done. We're almost done with the lecture today. So, quotation marks. All right. So I have an idea or a word, and boy, it's important. And so what I'm going to do is I'll put it in quotation marks. All right? Let's put it in quotation marks. Well, here's my example. The reason why so many people feel unfulfilled is because of society. Like, what the hell does that mean? But I'm not kidding. I see this so often in writing. When I get papers, I'm just like, what is that? Okay, I've read a couple of studies on this, and the fact is, when you are tempted to do that, it's because the word actually is important. So the next time you feel the need to maybe put a word in quotation marks, you might want to define it, or at least elaborate. Okay, that's my best. Really, that's the best suggestion that I can give you. But I'm going to give you a really good example. Okay, all right. So a friend and I are cleaning up. This happened. Okay, the stuff that I show you here, you can't make this stuff up. So a friend of mine. I was over helping a friend. She was moving. Okay, a couple of friends were over, and we were cleaning out things. And she's a pianist, okay? So concert pianist, trained, like really, really talented. And I came across this note, and I'm gonna read you the note. You can see it there, but you have to read it in context. Just watch me as I read it, okay? So, came across this note, and I thought, all right. Thank you for the splendid concert, and to wish you the best in the coming years. Now, I just started laughing because the person, like I said, she's incredibly talented. But to read this note the way it's written makes it sound like the concert was shit. Right? In other words, it wasn't a concert at all. And want to wish you the best in the coming years. Sounds like a death threat. Anyway, I think you get the idea of what I'm talking about, okay? So if you feel the need, that was a good way to end the lecture. If you feel the need to put words in quotation marks, think about it, all right? You might want to elaborate. Anyway, final two things, then we're done for the day. Don't ask questions in your papers. Never, again, well, in high school, I don't care. Don't ask questions in your papers, all right? Avoid them. Why? Because either you will answer the question, which means you just wasted a sentence asking the question, or worse, you won't ask the question, which then leaves the reader wondering, well, that was a pretty good question. Why didn't you answer? So don't do that. Simple as that. No, I don't want to talk about it in workshop or whatever. Just don't ask questions in papers. All right? And then, keep in mind, now I'll end off the lecture by insulting your intelligence, okay? Keep in mind, the word to, TWO, is a number. Yeah, it is. What I'm really getting at there is TOO and TO. For some, they can be really confusing. And again, spell check, Grammarly, whatever, they don't catch stuff like that. So remember, TO is the word that you will want almost always. And then if you want to add something on to, okay, then it's TOO. Meaning, I would like to go to the store. So both TO. I would like to go to the store to, TOO. I would like to be added on to the group. So here's your silly little rule. When you add on, you add on. The room is perfect the way it is. Oh, one more person just came in. Now there are too many. We just added on. So when you add on, add on. Add on the extra O. All right, anyway. Finally, remember that every sentence is about someone or something. That's something I'll come back to later on. That's where we get into the whole notion of subjects and verbs. But I think, for now, let's not worry too much about that. Anyway, that was... I didn't think it was going to take that long. That was an hour and 10 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, I hope I didn't go too overboard with the first two lectures. I was doing those at 8 in the morning, and I'm not a morning person. Oh, one last thing. When I finish this lecture, I'm going to then have to manipulate it because Brightspace won't allow me to add large lectures like this. I have to do other things. So, and the processing can take a long time. You'll notice that it looks like you can get these things at YouTube. Do not go to my YouTube page. There's many lectures in there, but many of them are out of date. Some of them go back 10 years. So please do not rely on YouTube, right, when you're watching the course. Everything will be on Brightspace for you. All right? Yeah, I'm glad to remember that. Anyway, okay. So, rainy afternoon, candy. We'll see you next time. Bye.